Alright, me darlings. Well, it's Christmas time again, but this year, Huck is going to get the gift, as I'm going to review something he's been hounding me to review for ages.
What?
We're going to review the puppet fantasy cult classic, The Dark Crystal. Yeah, we're finally doing this one. I bet you're excited, right, Huck? Huck?
Sorry, my voice actress just had to have a bit of a moment.
Okay then. Let's get into the movie. Dark Crystal is considered the ultimate dream passion project of puppetry messiah and Muppet creator Jim Henson. I'm sure I don't need to explain who the beardy puppet man is, but for a quick explanation, he was the creator of many puppet shows, not just the Muppets, but Sesame Street, Fraggle Rock, The Hoobs, Dinosaurs, Dog City, and many more, as well as providing the puppetry and effects for various movies such as The Witches, no, not that one, and the TMNT movies. No, definitely not those ones. And with his career moving more towards movies in the 80s, in 1982 he decided to make a world and story that used the full scope of his imagination and skills, that being the family-friendly, though put those words in really big quotation marks, fantasy movie that didn't star a single human character, only puppets or animatronics, made alongside his friend and colleague Frank Oz. This was the perfect time to make a movie like this, as the action fantasy genre was exploding in the mainstream, thanks in part to the success of Conan the Barbarian, and a movie that was entirely made up of non-human characters. It was a pretty amazing idea. An ambitious project to be sure, but if anyone could pull it off, it was them. The kings of puppet animation.
Huh, you consider puppetry a form of animation?
Well, you're taking something that normally doesn't move and making it move. That in itself is the literal definition of animation.
Well, it's got more movement than we have.
The film was primarily shot in England, because of course it was, in 1981, and despite how much of a high concept movie it was, the production seems to have been very well done with very little issues, at least not many that were documented. And the cast and crew seem to have definitely had a lot of fun making it. Usually that translates out to an entertaining movie, and let's find out if that was the case here as well, as we enter into the world of Thra.
I'm so happy right now.
The opening explains how this world has two races, Skeksis and Mystics. The Skeksis are planning to rule the world by using the blah 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 typical fantasy exposition. Say the title, narrator.
The Dark Crystal.
Take this seriously. I've been waiting years for this, and if you're not going to do this properly, then I quit.
Okay, I'll do this right. So the titular Dark Crystal is a powerful artifact that acts as the power source to the two races of this world, the corrupt and vulture-like Skeksis, who rule the world cruelly, and the kind but weak Mystics. They were created from the crystal being damaged a long time ago, and a shard of it being broken off and altering the world. Understandable. I feel like a different person after I've cracked one off.
Ugh.
Gelflings are the third race in this world.
In the Valley of the Mystics, there lives a Gelfling, Jen.
Well, what you call a Gelfling, I call an old Chuck E. Cheese animatronic that's been stripped naked. But this one, Jen, is the only known survivor, as the Skeksis have killed his family and all the other Gelflings years ago. And of course, being the last survivor of his race makes him the chosen one. It's the typical consolation for being the survivor of a genocide. Just ask Superman, or Goku, or the Doctor. He was found and raised by the Mystics. He meets with his master, who tells him that a time of convergence is coming, and that he needs to find the missing shard of the Dark Crystal before the three suns meet. So it's your typical fantasy, young, unassuming hero has to find something in a time frame narrative, not unlike Lord of the Rings.
Ogra holds the shard.
Ogra? Follow the greater sun. But master,
I'm only a gelfling.
I'm sorry, I hate to interrupt this exposition moment, but I have to say this. Is anybody else reminded of the old Thunderbirds puppets when looking at this guy? I know Jim Henson normally does amazing work, and in many cases in this movie, he does, but good grief, the gelflings, do they look creepy. I can tell that they were a big advance in hand and rod puppets, but sadly, the technology still wasn't ready, and it makes the characters look off-putting. There are a few times where they just look like people in suits, and in all honesty, it looks way better when they are, but they only do it in moments where they couldn't make it work with the puppet. But honestly, they should have just made the gelflings like that through the whole movie. What's all the more ironic because, despite deliberately looking ugly, the Skeksis and the Mystics look amazing. Granted, they do look like creatures that would eventually birth Keith Richards, but still, they look believable. They move in a way that feels so much more natural. The more elongated snouts make their mouth movements easier to manage, and they really do tread that line of looking and feeling like otherworldly creatures, but not seeming too real that they give you that uncanny valley effect and unnerve you. Unfortunately, the gelflings didn't have as good of a sense of balance in that field. This is sadly an issue that I can see ruining the movie for some people. I can see past it, but many might not be able to.
Those people are what I call Philistines.
And they're what I would call people with the power of sight. But let's get back to the plot. Jen's master does a Yoda and fades away after dying. Good old Frankie probably using the same effect he used on Yoda there, actually. And so Jen ventures off to find the shard. Meanwhile, we cut to the Skeksis' court where their emperor is on his deathbed. I think I should have put that in my Halloween video this year. So the remaining Skeksis then set about deciding a new emperor, with the one known as the Chamberlain gunning for the job.
Chamberlain! Say down that scepter!
I have absolutely no idea what's going on.
You think this is weird? In the original version, the Skeksis didn't even speak English.
I'd argue they still don't. I can't make out heads or tails what they're saying. Actually, I think some of Jen's inner monologue was also added in post, since it seems rather tacked on there to explain what's happening to the audience.
I'm not ready to go alone. Alright? Alone then.
You can tell originally a lot was left to the audience's interpretation, which is cool, but given how surreal the movie is, it would have been tough to follow. So as far as tacked on dialogue can seem, this was actually for the better. One of the flip sides of making a creative, imaginative and unique world is that you really need to hold the audience's hand to help guide them through the world, otherwise they'll just feel lost. And I can commend Jim Henson for showing his audience some respect by not spoon-feeding them, but while the overall plot of the movie isn't that complicated on the surface, the way it's presented to us is so surreal that even with the extra dialogue, it's tough to follow, even for me, and I'm a hardcore Doctor Who fan for crying out loud. Although, to be fair, in this scene, even the characters in the movie seem confused about what's going on. So, by chopping off the top of the rock, this guy becomes emperor, I guess. To be fair, it makes about as much sense as a battle to the death for king, and at least this way, the worst that can happen to you is some whiplash to your wrist.
Well, given what happens to the Chamberlain, I wouldn't say that.
By the law, he must pay!
Oh my goodness. I never thought I'd see a puppet being sexually assaulted. Well, outside of Meet the Feebles. Oh, wait, they're just banishing him. That makes more sense. Either that or they're getting him ready to make a Christmas dinner. The Chamberlain is thrown out into the wilderness, but not long after doing so, the rest find out that a Gelfling is alive and looking for the shard, and a Gelfling is destined to bring about the end of the Skeksis. So, they summon some Mirelurks.
They're called Garthim.
Call them what you want, those are Mirelurks from Fallout 4.
Remember what I said earlier, I'm warning you.
And they send them off to find Jen, who is venturing through the world of Thra.
What in the world? This place is weird.
Says you, pot calling the kettle black there. After some exploration around the weird but amazing looking landscapes, and being or gelf handled I suppose, by some grabby grass, Jen meets, Rosie O'Donnell crossed with Peter Falk.
You look like a gelfling! Smell like gelfling!
I bet you taste like one too. I eat well tonight.
Think I'm going to eat you?
This is, August? Audrey? Audacity?
Final warning.
I'm sorry, but I just cannot pronounce that name. Can we compromise and just call her Rosie O'Folk?
Fine, but don't expect me to say it.
She takes Jen to her place and, oh, okay, now we're in a Dwemer ruin. I get the feeling that some devs at Bethesda watched this movie a lot.
And begin, all the same, big change. Sometimes good, sometimes bad.
Did you see the nipples as well?
Yeah, I did not expect to see that. Nor did I wish to. Seriously, what the hell, Jim? Falk then tells Jen more about the meeting of the three suns and the Great Convergence, which could signal the end, or possibly a new beginning for their world. She then gives Jen the shard, but there's 3 of them. But Jen figures out which one is the real one by using his pipes. I guess it's a music mood crystal then. But no sooner does he pick it up, the Mirelurks show up and attack the pair of them. He escapes, but leaves Rosie O'Folk on her own. Goodbye! We'll never see you again, I'm sure.
Oh, just you wait.
So Jen then meets one of Chewbacca's mutated hairballs, and oh look! Another gelfling. Another perk of surviving a genocide, there's always one more of you out there. Though, sadly, in most cases they turn out to be insane dictators or maniacs. So I'd watch your step if I were you, Jen. This is Kira, and her pet, rabid tribble called Fizzgig. When they touch each other, they form a psychic bond that shows their backstories and them as babies.
We're dream fasting, sharing our memories.
I'm having a bath.
Oh my god, that is beyond cute.
Now do you see why I love this movie so much?
Cute mixed with weird and a little bit creepy. Yeah, it's pretty much the movie version of you. Kira was found and raised by a different species, and her upbringing has given her the ability to communicate with animals, which, through that ability alone, makes you entirely more useful than Jen. Can you be the hero instead? So Jen and Kira set off together, while the Skeksis indulge in a really gross version of the Last Supper.
Except every one of them is Judas.
Release the gelfling!
Oh hey, she does come back. Fair dues, you were right. Rosie O'Folk is brought in and the Skeksis initiate a man, or gelf hunt, for Jen.
He'll come, make you crawl like the worms you are.
Find that gelfling now!
I would search of every shire, hobbit hole, desert planet, cupboard underneath stairs, and police box in area.
Jen and Kira meet some shaved Ewoks, I guess.
They're called podlings.
Ah, that's a cute name. Though, to me, that sounds like what the Poddington Peas are called when they're kids.
Oh god, please don't play that theme song. I'll never get out of my head if you do.
Down at the bottom of the garden, among the birds and the bees, a little lot of little people, they call the Poddington Peas.
Too late. Sadly, they once again don't get much time to celebrate before the Mirelurks show up again. He really can't catch a break, can he? These guys are bigger killjoys than, well, this guy. The Chamberlain saves them, though they don't see it, and Jen goes through his typical "I'm not a hero" moment that we need to have in every fantasy movie. Though this quickly dissipates when they find that they are in an old gelfling ruin and find out what they need to do with the shard.
This is a piece of the dark crystal.
Then that's what my master meant.
Yes.
I have to put
You
it...
have to heal the dark crystal.
Prophecy?
Will you please stop interrupting each other?
It's very rude.
Of course, the Chamberlain arrives and offers them a deal. He'll escort them to the crystal, and they'll help bring about peace between the Skeksis and the Gelflings. Fitting how his name is Chamberlain, since he's going for the Neville Chamberlain strategy. And like his attempt to bring peace, it goes down just as well, since Jen and Kira refuse and run away, and Kira uses her natural affinity with animals to call them some rides. Oh, excuse me, it seems like my phone is ringing.
Over here! Daniel Tamar!
What's that?
It's a Landstrider.
Wow, the Wheelers from Return to Oz have had a serious makeover. It is a thing that happens a lot in Jim Henson fantasy movies, that the main characters run into whatever they need at every moment of strife. This is not too dissimilar to when Ludo in Labyrinth summoned the rocks out of nowhere when Jennifer Connelly and her gang are cornered. I mean, what does he think this is? A Star Wars story? As they venture to the crystal, the Skeksis have captured the Podlings and, well, do this to them. This is a kids' movie, right?
That's a matter of debate.
I guess it's fitting they called it the Dark Crystal, since it certainly is dark. The Emperor then drinks the essence of the Podlings to make himself younger, because that's a thing he wants to do now for some reason.
You fraud!
Guess the Emperor's doctor should have told him,
Actual results may vary.
though I will admit the effects of drinking the essence and the Emperor gaining his youth back, it does look really good. And it's just about as ethically sound as any of the anti-aging products that Goop sells. Speaking of dark, the Mirelurks catch up with Jen and Kira, and this happens. I would say that this seems rather unusual for Jim Henson, but I remember the tone of some of his early coffee ads, and all of a sudden this all clicks into place. As they get thrown off a cliff, Kira unveils a new power she has.
I don't have wings.
Of course not. You're a boy.
You just get a front tail instead.
The Chamberlain catches up with them again, but this time takes a much less softly approach and causes Jen to injure his hand.
My hand!
So, my hand.
Okay.
You still have no idea what's going on, do you?
No, not a clue.
Well, remember when the previous emperor died? Jen's master also died?
Oh yeah. Okay, this is intriguing. I'm looking forward to seeing what this leads to. He then buries Jen under rubble and takes Kira back to the rest of the Skeksis, as to show that their best troops couldn't get her, but he could, and that he should get his position back as a result. Actually, I will give him credit. That was a good plan. He doesn't seem like the most intelligent, but that was a devious scheme. They then start to drain Kira's essence, presumably because it'll make the Emperor young longer, I think. But Jen uses his link with her to tell her to use her animal affinity powers to get out of there. The fact that he needed to remind her of that doesn't exactly show her as the most competent, which is surprising considering that she's been nothing but that throughout most of the movie. But it works, which leads to yet another Star Wars moment. Granted, this movie came out a year before Return of the Jedi, so maybe Oz was just testing some effects before he used them in the actual movie. Jen then makes his way to the Death Star core, the Dark Crystal Chamber. After he turns into a guy in a suit again, he climbs up and finds Rosio Falk and tells him to fix the crystal as the conjunction comes.
The great conjunction comes.
Yes, I know, I just said that. Also, I do like the extra touch of how, after Kira's gotten free, she does have visible signs of having her essence drained has left her looking more visibly gaunt and withered. It's a nice little attention to detail, I like it. In fact, she ironically looks more real and lifelike now she's closer to death. Not sure if that's some weird commentary or just a really miscalculated use of the makeup. Meanwhile, the Mystics, who have been venturing to the crystal this whole time, come to the entrance of the Skeksis palace.
You're not
name's not on the list, you're not getting in. Oh, I'm sorry, you must be in the band. Go right on in.
Jen finally arrives at the Dark Crystal, as does Kira, but unfortunately the Skeksis then arrive, so they have to hide. And even more unfortunately, Fizzgig gives away Kira's location.
Who would have guessed the cute sidekick ruined everything?
I can certainly believe that. Although he does redeem himself, though sadly it doesn't work out for him.
The Shah is mine!
Would you do that for me, Huck?
Well, if the fate of the world was at stake, then no.
Bastard. Nor does it work out for Kira either.
Heal the crystal.
Kira!
Careful there, guys. You don't want to stab the hand that's inside of her. Jen then finally gets the shard into the crystal, which at first doesn't seem to do much of anything. But then the mystics join with the Skeksis, though at first it looks like they're trying to mate with them. And they join together to make whatever the hell these things are.
Many ages ago, in our arrogance and delusion, we shattered the pure crystal.
In retrospect, it was a bad idea to use the crystal to test our wiffle ball bats.
Of course, as is typical with an 80s fantasy movie, they bring the dead supporting character back to life. To be fair, this is still a better decision than resurrecting Gurgi and Black Cauldron. And then they depart. Wait, aren't you going to help fix all the damage your bad halves did to this world?
Nah, we're out of here, bitches. Have fun cleaning up the mess we made. Bye!
And thus brings us to the end of The Dark Crystal. So, we finally reviewed the movie you wanted to review for ages. How do you feel?
Honestly, I think this movie's one of the great cult classics of our time. It's a bit slow and light in the story department, but it more than makes up for it with the puppetry and art design. This was one of the Jim Henson Company's most ambitious projects yet at the time, to create a live-action film without a single human on screen. And by God did it pay off. While visual effects have definitely come a long way since The Dark Crystal premiered nearly 40 years ago to the day of us sitting here talking about it, there's no denying that it is precisely the amazing puppetry and imaginative visuals that have kept it relevant all this time.
Is that you saying this, or your voice actress saying this?
No comment.
In all seriousness, this movie has a lot of flaws, but overall I really liked it, and a lot of that comes into the production design. The sets practically feel alive, and it's awesome that it creates such an amazing atmosphere. As amazing as the sets in Labyrinth were, they felt very enclosed. It felt like what you saw was what you got there. But here, it does really feel like a whole world beyond the horizon, and I love it when a movie makes it feel like the whole world keeps on turning outside of the frame. The downside to this is that the sets are in massive contrast to the story, which despite trying to be epic, feels very simple and downplayed. The characters, while not the most compelling, are good, and we enjoy being around them, and as confusing as the villains are, they are fun to watch, even if their voices can get a bit grating sometimes.
You're one to talk.
Quiet, you. The only major drawback is, as I said, the story. With a world that seems this fleshed out, I feel that the story should be more epic and grand, but as I joked before, it's just a very diet version of your typical fantasy quest story. And while it does leave a lot to be desired, it's clearly more of a Kubrick or a Burton style movie. The story is more of an afterthought to tie all all the nice visuals together. I guess people love this movie in the same way that I love rock and roll. It's rough around the edges, but the parts that are good and its overall goals are so compelling that it overrides the rough parts, and it is wholly unique, which this movie definitely is. I've not seen another movie that looks like this, and it's amazing. It's also really endearing to see someone realize their dream project like this, even if the result doesn't quite capture the audience's attention as much as he'd hoped it would. It is still great to see Henson make something that he always wanted to do. You've certainly come a long way since the Watkins coffee ads, haven't you? Sadly, despite the good parts being great, audiences weren't quite sold on the movie. While it did make nearly double its budget back, it wasn't the huge success that Henson wanted it to be, and the reception was a bit lukewarm, both from critics and audiences. As such, his next movie, Labyrinth, was definitely more generally appealing, getting previous fantasy movie director and former Monty Python member Terry Jones to write the script, and having more human characters in it, and a big draw with Bowie in the villain role.
And his wiener in some tight tights.
Yeah, that practically got its own credit, it stuck out so much. There were always plans to make a sequel, and several scripts were started in that regard, but they never materialised into a film. If you want to know more about it, check out Scribbles to Screen's video on the subject, where me and Huck actually recreate a small scene from one of the unfinished scripts, in which the main Gelfling characters are pressured into doing something that most people would have never expected them to do. Despite how the movie underperformed, it did gain a cult following, getting novels, comics, video games, and even a miniseries sequel in the form of Age of Resistance. Though, sadly, it only lasted a single series consisting of only 10 episodes. The series takes place before the events of the movie, but after the shattering of the crystal, detailing the genocide of the Gelfs. I've not seen it yet, but if this video proves popular enough, maybe I'll do a video on that one. But not anytime soon.
Aww.
But this was an enjoyable experience, and I'm glad I finally saw the movie. It does have its flaws, but the parts in it that are good are so good that I don't care about those bits. And I think it makes a good end to this year's series. And speaking of which, we've got to get to our Christmas dinner. Alright, Christmas dinner, here we go! Would you eat that?
Nope.
Merry Christmas.
Yo, what's up, everybody? This is Lil Jen, aka MC Gelfling. I'm about to take you on a little journey. Raise up your glasses, y'all, and get ready for the story of the Dark Crystal. Once upon a time, in the distant land of Thor, there was a huge ass supersized bottle of crystal. Living under three suns, all the people having fun.